Welcome to the Apex Vaulting Podcast. This is episode 90. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. And if you do, please subscribe to us on iTunes. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's just Apex Vaulting, and watch all the podcasts on there. We've been uploading the video versions of them. Also, you should follow our Instagram, The Real Apex Vaulting. And we're also Apex Vaulting on Facebook and Twitter. And if you have any comments or questions, just email us at apexvaulting@gmail.com. Also, I want to announce, if you're looking for a great present for that pole vaulter that you love and care about, you could probably find something good on Team Hoot. If you visit Team Hoot and use the promo code APEXPV, you get a discount, and it goes towards us too and helps our club out. So if you're looking for that awesome Christmas gift for a pole vaulter, go on Team Hoot. Sean Francis, he's the guy who started Team Hoot. If you don't know him, he's been on the podcast. Awesome guy. 18 plus guys, placed at USA's. And he definitely, he left no stone unturned during his career. He did so much different types of things with training, with technique. He really pushed the limits. And on his website, you can buy Team Hoot shirts. You can buy his Pole Vault Toolbox book. It's when I think of pole vault books, there's two that come to mind. I think about Beginner to Bubka and Sean's book that came out this past year. Top two books in my mind, right? You can find his book on there. And then also he sells a lot of training stuff. So definitely go on the website. And if you're looking for a discount, just use promo code APEXPV. That would be great. We'd really appreciate it. And again, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the podcast or subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media. That being said, today's episode, I have Robert Plumb with me. He's jumped with me for quite a few years at the club. We call him the PV professor. So he's like, you're basically a pole vault nerd.
What can I say?
Yeah. So we always hash out all this like pole vault stuff. And recently you have the video that I used. One of the pole vault sites showed this video of Bob Richards during the straight pole era. And I was talking about this video all week at practice. Look at that push off. What an amazing, amazing push off. And that's a pole that doesn't bend. It's the straight pole era. And so what I did was I made a video that I posted on my YouTube channel. I posted on my Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, where it's about 2.5 minutes, and I analyzed the entire jump. Before I go any further, and I want you to tell me what you think. Mm-hmm. Just when I look at the analytics of stuff that I post, now I don't have like a crazy amount of followers, right? Like I think we have about 2,600 followers on Instagram, and I don't even know the numbers for a lot of the other things. But that being said, Instagram being our largest following, I get sometimes as much as 1,000 likes on a meme, right? On a pole vault meme. But it's very, very common to get 300, 400, 500 likes on a meme. Everybody loves funny shit. I think it's super easy. When I normally put out instructional stuff, right, I'm lucky to get 100. I mean, there's a lot of times when I put instructional posts, it might only get 60 likes. So I'm just saying the gap between what usually happens. And I think you could say, oh, you know what, I should just make it a meme page and just post memes. But that's not the point. Even the memes that I post, I try to have it tied in with something to do with technique or coaching or just pole vault life in general. But this post got a better reaction. And just so you know the numbers, again, it's not up there with memes, but it did well, yeah.
It got a lot of likes.
It got 151 likes, right? 39 comments, 48 DMs. As a business page, you can see who DMs your posts. 48 times it was DM'd to somebody, and 34 bookmarks. This is really, really good for something that's more technical on my page. And it got a big reaction. And I think all the normal people that reach out to me or comment or whatever, they had something to say about this video. It kind of triggered people. It got positive feedback as well.
Absolutely.
If you follow him on Instagram, Nikolai Parlbender, he's a 17'9" guy from South Africa. Regimen from UNC Charlotte, who's an 18-plus guy. He commented a lot of positive feedback. but I get a lot of negative. Now, for people who haven't watched the video, I would highly advise at this point, maybe pause the podcast, watch the 2.5-minute video.
Yeah, well worth it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. And that way you'll also be able to understand more about
the context.
Yeah, the context and what we're talking about. Now, again, I think that a lot of people who reach out to me when I have these conversations, and Rob, I'm going to ask you a question in a second, is that people reach out to me and they're like, well, you know, Bronco, I don't think the straight pole era jump applies to modern day pole vaulting. And what do you think about Mondo's jump? Or what do you think about Renault or Sam Kendricks or this guy? And that's all well and good. But what I try to also explain to people is context is super, super important, right? You know, if you are coaching Mondo, awesome. And maybe there's certain things that are very, very particular with that kind of situation, dealing with a professional, that merits what you are doing in your context, in your environment, in your atmosphere. But Rob, as a person who now is a sophomore year of college, obviously you're at home right now because of the current situations, right. But like, you know, going through the club in high school, seeing, especially in our neck of the woods in the Northeast, in New Jersey, you know, seeing what you saw through high school and seeing even what you see in the local collegiate area. Why do you think I posted that video of Bob Richards jumping and started talking about the push-off? What are some things that you've noticed, and what was your experience as a high school athlete and now collegiate? And I mean, take it where you want. Like, how does this video apply to our context?
Right. I feel like a lot of people, they have a lot of misconceptions about the vault. So they think, the reason I feel like a lot of the reason why you posted about the push-off and you put a lot of emphasis on the push-off is because there's a misconception that the bending of the pole is what allows you to get push-off off the top of your grip. Right. For the most part. Maybe, yeah. But that was...
And obviously I think, okay, if we're talking about, you know, professional athletes,
right.
I mean, like, I don't think that, like, I didn't post that video going, man, Rob, I'm going to make this video. I really hope Mondo watches it and changes what he's doing.
Right.
That wasn't my goal at all.
Right. The biggest thing is obviously to try to help out someone who's just looking for information about the vault, of course. Like you're saying, like, you're not going to change anyone's mind who's like has a set mindset of what they're doing. Like professional vaulters probably aren't going to change their mind. People that have been jumping in a system for years aren't really going to change their mind. But there are plenty of high school vaulters, especially in this time, who maybe like just got started last year, only vaulted like a year with their high school, maybe didn't have a coach, maybe did have a coach, but it isn't like a great coach or whatever, or isn't the main pole vault coach, or wasn't a pole vault.
Or maybe pole vault is not their main event as the coach. You know, they might be the throws coach and they have to also do the pole vault. You know what I mean? So they have a rough idea of it. But like, again, going to the video, why do you think that I post a video like that, looking back to when you were in high school, looking even at collegiately? What do you see are major issues when you watch people vault? I mean, first of all, especially at the collegiate level, people are bending the pole. I don't see a lot of straight pole.
And I don't see a lot of people that are arguing against bending the pole. Like
the pole should bend.
Yeah, no one's suggesting that like straight pole jumping is better than bent pole jumping.
Right. So what do you see as like some of the major flaws that you saw, whether it's high school or college? What am I trying to address? Like, I mean, we've talked about this, you know what I mean? Like, what do you see when you go to meets? Like, think back to even like going to counties in high school.
Right. And I mean, you see a lot of different things. I mean, you see a lot of people putting too much emphasis on bending the pole and putting too much emphasis. Whereas like, I don't know how to like describe it, but it's like what you're showing is that on straight pole, you can get height just on a straight pole. Bending the pole shouldn't be the main priority of the jump, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I mean, definitely also, you know, observing other coaches, observing stuff that I've seen in meets. Again, we're talking about high school, maybe even like local college stuff. There's a lot of people, it's like the first priority is like, okay, we got to bend this pole. We got to bend this pole. I'll literally watch kids that are going practice after practice just trying to bend a pole. And we're talking about also like, again, to give context for people who are watching and listening, we're talking about like you might be dealing with a freshman high school boy who's 5'4", 110 pounds.
Like,
it's like, dude, we can teach them how to do a proper takeoff, a swing, a turn. They could be, trying to wrap a bungee or clear a bar well before the pole actually starts to bend, right?
Right.
And then again, and I think the thing that I wanted you to talk about, because I think this was your bread and butter and why you achieved any kind of success, you had a pretty good push off, or you still have a good, I say it like he's not jumping anymore. Like he's retired, guys. No, but like you have a pretty good push off, especially with the grip that you have, because your PR is 13.7. What were you gripping when you jumped 13.7?
When I jumped 13.7, well, for the first time I jumped it with 12.9 grip. Okay. And I believe I jumped it with 12.7 grip.
Okay, so your best differential was 12.7 grip, jumping 13.7, but you've done it with as high as 12.9.
Yeah.
But that being said, and again, for people who don't understand, you have to subtract the 8 inches from the box, right? So it's like if we go with your even your highest, 12.9, minus 8 inches, it's 12.1. So 13.1 is a foot, and then plus you did another 6 inches, right? Because 13.7. So you're talking about 18-inch push-off, right? So that's Rob's push-off. I can't tell you how common it is, like going to a high school meet and there's a boy gripping 13, jumping 12. Right. And then you see a girl gripping like 11.9, jumping 10. Yeah, like these are very, very common. And, if you just do the math, right? 11.9 grip minus 8 inches. So it's 11.1. This girl is going 13 inches below her grip. The guy is going, so 13-foot grip is he's going negative 4 inches, you know what I mean, below his grip. I think you can do better. I think you can do better. And even in the video that I posted, I said, these are some elements from the straight pole era I think you can take. Right. I didn't say, hey, jump exactly like this guy.
Yeah, no, of course not. Because obviously it changed. And that is the biggest thing, and I think needs to be touched on, is like, if you worry about jacking up your grip so much that you end up creating a negative push-off of such an extent, like what's the point? You know what I mean? Because you can only jack up your grip so much to the point where, like, are we going to keep going on this where you're gripping 15 and only jumping 13.6? You know what I mean? Because that's not better.
Right. And so here's the thing too that I think people have to think about. You're either moving the pole or you're going up the pole. Right. And there's a percentage of effort that can go into either one of those. Right. And I think sometimes, again, there's checks and balances with everything.
Of course.
So if your grip keeps going up and all of a sudden your push off keeps going down, you could fall into a situation where all of a sudden you can't PR. Like my best story about this is before I started coaching the way I coach today, right? Like beginning that evolution. I would tell people I coach a very traditional Petrov Bubka model, like hands really high. You want a big reverse C, a lot of chest, and stretch swing. And I remember having a high school junior boy grip 13, jump 14 on a 14-170. Right. That's good. Kid worked really hard, all summer, lifting, jumping, training. We go to his first meet. He's gripping 13.9, 9 inches higher, and he's on a 14.770. So he's up 10 pounds of pole. Right. And he jumped 12.6. And I was like, yikes, something's not right, you know? And he actually, like most of that indoor, struggled to get back to 14, which he eventually did. And then outdoor CPR, jumping 14.4. But ironically, not from his full approach. He did it from a 5 after tweaking his hamstring, so he kind of could only end up going back to a 5 at that point in the year. And I think he was only gripping 13.3.
So there you go.
Yeah, so it's like there were certain things. So I think sometimes if you're just chasing grip and trying to bend the pole more, you can start putting so much effort into that, like pole speed, right? Because you're putting effort either into pole speed or swing speed. And it's like, so you could lose sight that you're slowing down the jump too much.
The biggest thing is you need both. You can't have a jump that's all pole speed where you're just gripping 19 and then sitting over a bar. You don't, like, that's not ideal. And you don't want to jump like a straight pole jump where your grip is lowered because you're not bending the pole, but you have an insane push off.
And listen, I hate at this point, I know some of us might be sick of line graphs at this point of our lives, but I have a line graph here, right? So if you look at it, I think does that look clear?
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah. Why does it look backwards?
Oh, no.
Oh no.
Well, if you see, we'll just ignore the words for a second, and
This is tough. Why does it do that? I didn't realize it does that.
that's annoying.
I don't think I could draw this backwards right now. Damn it. All right.
Basically, the idea is that you need to put your effort into either swing speed or pull speed. You can't.
Right. So I'm going to post a picture of this on my Instagram, especially for the people who are just listening, right?
Yes.
And you can pull this up. But going up the line graph here, this is your effort, right? And your effort is 0 to 100%. Unlike, I know us coaches say 110%, but you can only put 100% of effort into anything or any two things, right? Like you can't put 100% effort in pull speed and 100% effort in swing speed. So it has to be managed, right?
Right.
Then on the bottom, you have time of the jump. 0, meaning like you just took off, to the end of the jump where it's finished. And I have the 50% point halfway through the jump dotted out, right? Now, the green line here, and it'll be a red line on Instagram, I think, is the swing speed, right? And then the black line is pull speed. If you notice at the beginning of the jump, right, your pull speed, like almost like 75, 80% of your effort is pull speed. Where at the beginning of the jump, maybe only like 20, 25% is swing speed. Then when the jump is halfway done, meaning here's the pole at takeoff, and we're like halfway to vertical, that's halfway point of the jump, it's 50-50. 50% of your effort is pull speed, 50% of your effort is swing speed. And then as the pull continues going past the 50% point, you start to focus more on swing speed and less on pull speed because the pull's almost at vertical.
Right. And you need to worry about getting your hips up so that you can clear the bar
right.
and get the push off.
And I apologize if I'm not explaining this really, really well, or this is over maybe somebody's head. But like, basically, that's the optimal way. I'm not saying that's how everybody jumps all the time, but you want that your swing speed matches the pull speed, right? And that you can continue to move the pole through the entire jump.
Right. What you don't want to happen is you don't want to hit takeoff and then move the pole as much as it can and then it not move at all afterwards.
Right.
Through your swing or anything like that.
Right. And so, like, again, going back to that straight pull era jump, and again, that's a little bit of a tough angle, but you can get other angles that show it better. During the straight pull era, those guys were moving the pole through the entire jump. That pole kept moving as they swung. Whereas, like what Rob is saying, I think a lot of times, again, context matters. I'm not talking about professionals right now. And honestly, even if a professional was doing something wrong, they're clearly doing it well enough, and maybe they need to stick to that. Right. Which, I mean, and we'll revisit the professional thing in a minute. But like, so in the context of coaching high school athletes, coaching even college athletes, even coaching in an area where you have a plethora of people that are trying pole vault. Like I was explaining to someone through DMs the other day, it's like, listen, in my context, I'm trying to grow the sport in my area. There's a lot of beginners and novices coming in to try pole vault. You know, I need them to move the pole through the entire jump. And what I notice in this area and in this context, there's a lot of people, like you said, Rob, they hit takeoff, there's some pole bend, the pole moves a little bit, and then to swing, they have to stop moving the pole. Right. You know, you have someone that comes down, they got a big bottom arm, they block a lot, and then they just completely collapse that bottom arm to just lean back. And then the pole stops moving.
The pole stops moving, then it can become dangerous if you need to start.
Okay, before we even get to that, but I don't know if I want to say dangerous, but what I would say is, like, you're not going to move the pole as well, and you're also not going to achieve the push-off. Right. Again, going to the example of that high school boy that's gripping 13 that jumps 12, that kid is coming in and smashing into the box and then just completely just like leaning back to try to swing, and now they fall off the top of the jump and they end up with a negative 4-inch push-off. Right. I want to help that athlete hook up with the jump better. And even me saying hook up with the jump, I think some of the things that we need to start to talk about in the pole vault is language. Like, what does this mean? What does it mean to hook up with the jump? Yeah. You know, some people even use the term, you know, beat the bend or whatever. It's like, you've got to swing and get to that cover position. Your hip has to get to at least your bottom hand so that you can turn effectively and push off the top of the pole.
Right. And going back to your point of like using the video as like a guide, like what he's showing is that they are moving.
I'm right here. You can say I'm showing.
What Bronco's showing through his post was that in the straight pull era, they always were moving the pole throughout the entire jump. There was never a point where they were putting all their effort in just going up the pole and made sure that the pole stopped moving.
Right. And like, I can't even imagine, like again, I think a lot of coaches do like straight pulls, pull drills, right?
Of course.
So it's like, if you go on a straight pull, you just try to slam into the box and lean back.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to work. Like, you're not even going to come close, you know what I mean, to having any kind of push off, and you're probably going to struggle to get into the pit. So again, I think this is the key word, right? Like, talking about language, where I think people really, it's like, oh no, he used that word.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Don't use
like,
it.
What's your experience, even like you know, going through this club and talking to people outside of the club at meets, and now going to college when we use the word pull, right? We use the word pull. What do you think the problem is? What happens when you're talking to someone and they ask you, Rob, what's pulling about? Like, what has been your experience talking to people?
Well, I feel like a lot of people disregard it as a way to pole vault, because they think pulling is bad because you need to push the pole into the box. That's the only way to get it moving forward, is to push it in.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you're crazy. Like, why would you pull?
And the reason,
if you pull, you're going to pull the pole back to the ground.
And that's the biggest misconception. We're not pulling with our bicep. We're not pulling to collapse. We're not trying to collapse. We're not doing any of that.
I thought that's the only way to pull.
No, Bronco. Wrong.
So Rob, enlighten me.
So when your hands are above your head, you want to hit a takeoff where your hands are in a good takeoff spot, and then your hands go up above your head so you have leverage, and then you can pull with your lats, which is still a pull.
Right.
And you're pulling your hips up to your
hands.
Above
your hands.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that's, again, and this is where, you know, even someone was DMing me and they're like, maybe I just don't understand you. I go, and I messaged back and I was like, I agree.
Right.
You know, because I do think there's a misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the word pull has become so bad in the pole vault. Like, it's a bad word, because especially once fiberglass came about, it's like people are like, well, you have to, if you bend the pole more, you can grip higher. And then the other thing is, they're like, well, some people are collapsing at takeoff, and I don't want to collapse.
Right.
I don't think you're trying to collapse when you jump.
No.
I also would warn people that it really depends on where in the progression of your vaulting career and athletic career you are. Meaning, I don't know if you're 5'4", you weigh 110 pounds, you're gripping 9'9". Like, how extended can the bottom arm really be at that point?
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, because I think a critical thing that I tried to explain in that straight pull video is that the important thing is not so much that your bottom arm is fully extended. No. It's that the bottom hand is above your head, so you have leverage to pull in the fashion that we're trying to explain. And so the other thing is, like, look, I get it. If someone runs in and their bottom hand collapses because they don't do anything at takeoff, that's bad. If someone is running down and before the pole hits the back of the box, they hug the pole and they collapse in, that's bad.
Correct.
If someone runs down and they're really trying to bend the pole and they push on a pole that's not going to bend a lot, they might collapse. A lot of things cause a collapsed bottom arm, but not all of those things are pulling.
Right.
And on the other end of the spectrum, you could have someone have an extended bottom arm and they are pulling because they're not trying to pull. I always tell people, it's not like you're not trying to push your hands down by your hips. No. You're trying to pull your hips above your hands.
Right.
You know, even I heard someone use like, oh, why would you ever pull down on your arm? It's like, well, you're not trying, first of all, you're not pulling down on your arm. You're using your arm to pull your body up. I always use high bar stuff as an example.
Yeah.
If you do a pullover, right? Or if you try to go upside down on a rope, are you pushing or pulling?
Right. That's the biggest thing. That's exactly what I was going to bring up too, is like, you wouldn't consider that a push if you're going upside down on a rope. And that's basically what we're trying to accomplish in the pole vault.
Right.
On a similar scale.
Yeah. Listen, I was in Akron one year, and I'm not going to name names. I was in Akron one year, and a coach Very, very good coach. I think this guy's awesome. Had a great career. He's talking about rope drills.
Mhm.
And during the presentation, he says, look, when you do the rope drill, to do it appropriately, your hands are up here, and you got to pull yourself upside down.
Right.
And one of my athletes like raised his hand. He's like, so when do you want to pull in the pole vault? And the coach said, oh, no, don't do that when you jump. So then in my mind, I was like, and I didn't want to cause a scene, but it's like timeout.
Yeah.
So one, if your claim is you don't do that in the pole vault,
Then
why
do you do it on the rope? Why
do the
have
rope
the drill? Yeah.
Don't do the drill.
Right.
Two, clearly you see some importance in this drill and there is some kind of carryover. I think the problem becomes that a lot of people don't want to take the time to explain a lot of nuance.
Right.
Right?
And I agree.
And I think even, your experience at the club, like, okay, once you started coming into Apex, can you walk us through, like, did you come once a week, once every other week? Did you come in, like, just during winter track? How did it work for you?
So, well, it first started, like, going into the winter season, we didn't have a place to jump at, like, my school and stuff.
What year was this?
Sophomore year of high school.
Okay.
So that's when I first started coming into the club, and I started coming in 3 days a week because I was like, why not, get more jump time.
Yeah, again, guys, this is the PV professor. He's geeked out on pole, loves it.
So anyway, I started coming in for that, just to have a place to jump while we're in the winter season, so that I didn't.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I had only jumped spring of outdoor high school.
Yeah, of your
freshman year. Yeah. And so, what was the question again? So I started
like,
doing that.
What is your training regimen here? Like, how often do you come? Do you come once a season, all year round? Like, what is customary here at Apex? Like, how often do people come
Right.
in?
And so not everyone comes in 3 days a week all year round, but and even now I only come in 2 days a week, and for the past couple of seasons. And obviously it's changed when I go to college and stuff like
when
that.
You're away from home.
Of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people come in 2 to 3 times a week throughout the year.
Yeah, like, this is just what you do. You have to come in, not like you have to, but like people want to come in year round, and they train. And this is so big. It's so important. The context is so important. When you have people coming in year round and you have them training here, and again, we're not even going to get into lifting, but we have a lifting program that everybody does that helps them get stronger and faster. But like, you as an instructor have to be able to level up all the time.
Of course.
I can't have, let's say, these are the core 3 drills, Robert.
Oh, yeah.
And you've graduated. You're done. Because why the hell would he keep coming back in? There's nothing else to learn.
Yeah, what's there to do? You have to keep evolving. You have to, like, take any other sport, for example. Like, take, I don't know, what do you want, like MMA?
I always use the martial arts example. Yeah, you're going through the belt system.
Yeah, you're going through the belt system. You're leveling up. And even think about it from like a mixed martial arts. If you're training for like a fight or something like that, and there's a specific guy that you're training for, you're gonna mix up your training to be better combated against that guy.
You have to have a different focus.
Yeah.
And even, like, here's the thing. You might even do sometimes, like, okay, this is the same drill. Let's say it's just takeoff, right, from a 3.
Right, yeah, like a takeoff drill.
But as you go through from being a white belt to a blue belt to whatever, so on and so forth, that drill is done differently. And there's a different intensity. There's a different feeling.
And there's a different level. Like, for example, like Bronco could say to a novice, like doing a takeoff drill for the first time, or, maybe it's his second day and he's doing it a lot better than he was the first day. He'd be like, really good. That's awesome. Yeah. And it's like, maybe it's not like technically that good, but it's way better for them. Right. Whereas like if I do a takeoff drill or someone else who's super been here for a long time, it's like we could do a takeoff drill that is better technically, but it's like you're correcting us on
because
different
it's not good
things
for you.
Right. It's a different.
Yeah. I almost think of it as like, from a coaching perspective, you're looking at it like a beginner almost. It's like looking at a landscape with your eyes.
Right.
Then it's like you start using binoculars, and then eventually you get to the microscope level where, you know what I mean? You're cutting it up so much. So you have to add all these layers, and you have to keep adding and adding and adding layers. And that's just, I mean, if you're going to jump year round, if you're going to have people jump year round, it has to be done that way. And
Yes.
that way people's jumps can keep evolving. Going back to the MMA example, I mean, that's why it takes usually at a reputable gym, it takes 10 years to get your black belt, right? Going back, because I feel like we need to go back to pulling.
Yeah.
But like, when you've had conversations, whether it's with a teammate or with a fellow competitor, and they ask you about pulling, what are their questions to you? What don't they understand, and how do you explain it to them?
So a lot of the time when I explain it to them, like, no, like you need to try to pull your hips up, to like someone who hasn't been around pole vault people a lot, they're like, oh, like that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because think about it, like you need to pull your hips up, like your hips are what need to go over the bar. You need to get your hips up as fast as you can. And this is the easiest way to do that. And so, but to someone who's been training, a lot of people kind of like, they question you, not like question you, but they are skeptical, I guess is the best word.
Right.
And they kind of, a lot of the times they just dismiss you, and like, they're not like, they don't, I mean, you're at a track meet, so you're not really going to get into like a full-fledged argument or anything about it. But, you know, what ends up happening is like, I end up explaining like, no, like this allows my hips to go up, and then they typically combat with like, but you could grip a lot higher, or you could do this, that, or the other. And it's like, maybe I could grip higher, but would I jump higher? And like, there's all these factors. And it's like, I feel like with pulling, you allow yourself to jump as high as you can with what speed you can create yourself, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, again, we're talking about context. Like, I think with what we see at meets, you know, I think there's a lot of people that are losing speed at the box because they're slamming into the box.
Right. Exactly.
And they're really trying to keep that bottom arm locked out, and they run into trouble.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I think I would argue that they're actually not moving as much grip effectively as they can, but they're literally could maybe grip higher. Then the other thing is they're certainly not hooking up with the jump.
Right.
I mean, again, and I wish, you know, I had the time, and I apologize because I'm about to like kind of make up a statistic, right? But like, I haven't done the study, and nobody's going to do the study. But if you walk around through high schools and most colleges, the major issue is that you have a lot of kids that don't come close to even clearing their grip a lot of times.
Right.
I see athletes who, again, let's talk about even the inverted position.
Okay.
Right? Trying to get inverted. A lot of people push lean back, which again, so many people that I've talked to, they're like, no, Bronco, I don't want my athletes to lean back, right?
Right.
But here's the thing. One, if you push, I mean, yeah, if you're going to block and you're going to push at takeoff, you're just going to lean back.
Like that's
then,
like a natural thing that happens.
Right. And when you lean back, the big problem is your center of mass is too far away from your hands. So now when you turn, you're just going to fall off the pole, and you're going to have like a negative 4-inch push off, right? Where I always tell people, I'm like, I've had several jumps in my life where, let's say it was just an early jump in the competition, or I just wasn't feeling fast, where I didn't come close to inverting, right? Because I just didn't swing fast enough. I couldn't get there quick enough. I went to the turn, didn't get inverted, and still had an 8-inch push off.
Right.
And I always tell people, what would you rather have? Hit a perfect invert in -4, or would you rather have a half swing and then turn and get an 8-inch push off?
Right.
And I think we all know the answer to that question.
And going back to like hooking up with the jump and like branching off with that, like a lot of the times when people push, it's like you delay the swing a little bit. Does that you know what I mean? Like,
well, go into detail with that. Like,
so I feel like
what I want you to think about, like, again, like, we don't have to name names.
No.
But like, literally, as you're explaining this, try to think about someone that you're like, you know what I mean, that you've had experience with this. Like, what happens? And again, for the people that are listening, when I did that video and I'm explaining, you know, you want to allow your hands to go up at takeoff. And you got to jump up to do that.
Of course.
You want to pull with your bottom hand through the swing, and then start pulling with the right hand through the turn and push off.
Yep.
If you watch that Instagram video and what I'm trying to explain, walk us through what do these athletes that you're thinking about right now what do they think they're doing? What are they actually doing? And what do you think is holding them back?
So I think what they think they're doing. Let's start with that. They think they're.
I'm that guy. I'm your teammate, and I'm like, dude, pulling is bullshit. Okay,
right.
so go ahead.
So basically, what I bet you think you're doing is you think you're moving a bigger pull and bigger grip than you could have if you were to pull into the pit.
Sure.
And I'd argue that if you were to pull, like what's actually here, let's go with what's actually happening. What's actually happening is you're pushing and maybe you're moving the pole, you're bending the pole more maybe, and then you're lowering your center of mass.
Right.
And what happens is you delay your swing, or because you're pushing into the continue with it. Yeah.
What also you're doing, right? Like, so yes, let's even give the argument. You're bending the pole more, you're moving the pole into the pit, but as Rob was explaining, your center of mass is staying down because you're pushing.
Right.
And all this time, the pole continues to move. So you have less time now to beat the bend or finish the cover.
Right. And so what ends up happening is you can't recover. You can't beat the bend per se if you do that too much. And you might argue like you need to work harder to beat the bend or this, that, and the other. But it's like you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Like if you were to pull at takeoff and you were to like get your hands above your head, pull with your lats at takeoff, one, you're not delaying the swing at all. Right. Once your hands go up, it's immediate. Your hips are going up. Your hips are going up and your hips are getting to your hands.
Right. And so again, sorry to interrupt you. Mm-hmm. I think also what's important when you pull, you could put some effort into moving the pole and some effort, not 100%, right?
Of course.
You'll have a total of 100. But you can put a percentage of effort into moving the pole and a percentage of effort into swinging.
And I also think those are a little interrelated because
but hold on.
Yeah, finish what you're saying.
What I was going to say is the athlete that's pushing at takeoff, and we're going to go to another option after this, but the athlete that's pushing at takeoff, what's happening is you have to choose one or the other.
Right.
You're either moving the pole or you're either leaning back and trying to get upside down. You're swinging. You cannot split. There's no way to move the pole and swing up. It's really, really difficult. I mean, again, not trying to name names, but you can find videos of even, people that are jumping super high that they really like lock out and they've got to give up on that lockout, that block out, and then just try to lean back.
And they cut in. Yeah. And I mean, and that's a lot of the time. I feel like I've heard people say it's like people that do that. It's like finding that balance of when to
when to collapse.
And it's like, but why wait? Why not just do it right away so that your hips go up faster?
Right.
And the biggest thing is, like you were saying, you can put effort into moving the pole and moving your body when you are pulling, when you're swinging. And why I say they're interrelated is because I feel like when you are moving your body up and you're moving your body to the other side of the pole per se, you know what I'm saying? That is allowing the pole to move through the jump as you're pulling your body up.
Yeah.
And the thing is when like the people who push and the athletes bend their
collapse their bottom arm.
That's what ends up happening is if they do it correctly, they end up moving the pole through their turn and
they can get a little bit more pole speed. But it's very, very hit or miss because it's like a split second. It's like right. You're like trying to find the perfect time to like right. And it's like, what would be the cue? Like, say they did it, a tenth of a second too late. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, and listen, like I'm very big on coaching movement instead of positions.
Course, yes.
And so it's like you have to feel the pole moving, and maybe you could time that up, but literally, listen, once you collapse, that pole's really stopping the movement. Yeah. You might get it to move a little bit more once you start actually going through the turn. Right. Maybe.
Yeah, if you're going through the turn correctly.
If you're not close enough to vertical, I mean, that's just a jump you're going to bail out of.
Of course. Yep.
Now, let's talk other options, right? So we've been talking push or pull, right?
Right.
What if I told you, Rob, I'm just going to roll my hands forward?
Well, I'd I'd argue that that's putting you in a worse position.
What?
And the reason I say that is because when you're rowing your hands forward, you're effectively doing what the push did, if that makes sense, because you're lowering your center of mass by putting your hands out in front of you.
Right. I also, what I mentioned with the row is like when you're rowing forward, if you think about it, it's almost like you're pushing your hands down. So like, right, like I'm trying to get into a handstand on top of my hands. If I could, I wouldn't want my hands to get any lower. I'd want them to stay as high as possible. And I want my body to go above my hands.
Right.
By rowing forward, yes, your center of mass is still going to stay low, but then it's like you're not going to hook up with the jump effectively because your hands are kind of out of position, right? What if I told you I'm just not going to do anything with my bottom arm?
Well, I'd argue that that's like, why would you waste the muscle in your bottom arm? Like, why would you waste it? Like, why do nothing when you could do something?
Right. And so and we were talking about this podcast, like me and Rob were talking about this the other day after I had posted, and we were talking about some of the DMs and comments. And I think sometimes what happens in the pole vault world, which I think is a problem, is we're in this like echo chamber of pole vault, and we just keep talking pole vault jargon, which if you go far enough, it's like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? So like, I like to look at other stuff. You know, I really focus a lot of time on the strength and conditioning world. I've read like Charlie Francis's manuals about training Ben Johnson. I know that's bad, Rob, because Ben Johnson did steroids. And no other 100-meter runner ever did. But like, you know, and here's the thing. Oddly enough, in the strength and conditioning world, Charlie Francis is extremely respected. A lot of strength and conditioning coaches who, you know, their only job is to get athletes of any sport stronger and faster. They respect Charlie Francis, right? But, you know, the strength and conditioning coaches, they definitely don't know what they're talking about. That's sarcasm for everybody listening. You know, I tried to study as much Charlie Francis stuff as I could. I studied Louis Simmons from Westside Barbell. You know, then also I like to look at other sports like MMA, like American football, like, you know, and in the MMA world, you know, I remember in jiu-jitsu specifically, there's the Gracies are famous for introducing the world to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? And they have this wonderful, wonderful system. And one of their best coaches ever is John Danaher. He trained George St. Pierre, which is he's world champion, arguably the best MMA fighter ever. And John Danaher, I mean, he was on Joe Rogan once. I promise you, if you're a coach and you love coaching, and I think even athletes could appreciate this podcast, listen to the John Danaher podcast on Joe Rogan. There are so many gems of information in that about coaching, about being an athlete. Is just wonderful. And so I want you to think about this. Pulling is a bad word in pole vault. In the jiu-jitsu world, it used to be really bad to do leg locks. It was like embarrassing. Like you couldn't choke the guy out or give him an arm bar, so you had to do a leg lock. You suck. So nobody worked on leg locks, right?
Right.
And John Danaher said he was coaching at the gym, and this one professional jiu-jitsu guy came in one time, and he was like actually like famous for leg locks. And John Danaher's like, why do you do leg locks? And his response to John Danaher was, why would I ignore 50% of the body?
Exactly.
And this is what for people who are like, oh, don't do anything with your left hand.
Yeah.
Why would you ignore your bottom hand?
Yeah. I mean,
that's, you know what I mean? Like if you did a pullover on a high bar, why would you just be like, well, just use one arm. Well, hold on with the other one and just use the one arm.
Well, people, and you know what people might say to you, Bronco.
What might people say to me?
People might say, but you tell people you don't want them to you don't want them to do anything with your right hand at the first part of your swing.
Right. So and the way I explain that, right, is like you really would have a tough time pulling with your top arm at the beginning of the jump because you're trying to swing around your right hand.
Right.
So you have to have a nice tight grip. You hold on. And actually what I would say, once, again, this is layered stuff. I think to a beginner, I'd be like, hey, just hold on with your right hand.
Mm-hmm.
But as you start to advance, you know, what I would tell people is like, really what you're doing with your top arm as you swing in the beginning of the jump, you're kind of pulling almost like a lever instead of a pullover with your right arm until you get to the turn, and then you really pull.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like there's still something going on with the right arm.
Right.
I think sometimes I don't completely accurately explain this, because also it's not something I can do in a 30-second post. It's not something that I can explain, let's say, to a beginner on the first time never pole vaulted. It's something that needs the depth of a podcast episode like this.
And I think the biggest thing on that point is because if you were to do something with your right arm, like if you were to not just do what you were talking about with like a little lever and then incorporate it in the turn, you're going to be out of position, and you're going to end up not being able to turn, not being able to get through the middle of the jump.
Right. Because then what's going to happen is when you hit the cover where you should turn, your right arm won't be in a good position where you have leverage to actually pull through the turn. Like I have an Apex shirt on. So if like you see this, that's like the cover position. And you can see the vaulter here, the hip is to the bottom hand and the right arm or the top arm is fully extended. Then they can actually pull and bend the right elbow and pull through the turn, right? If you, let's say, pulled and bent your right elbow too early, like you said, you're out of position. You can't pull effectively through the turn. Now you're going to fall off the top of the jump. So you can only really like pull effectively, you know, with the left arm. You can do more of a lever action with your right
to assist.
Right. But you can't really go crazy with the right arm.
And I think that's the biggest distinction is like, why do something with your left arm because it can help you? Why not do something with your right arm because it can only hurt you?
Right. So I mean, I think those are some of the variations, right? Like we talked about pulling.
Yes.
We're trying to explain it. Then we talked about pushing, we talked about rowing, and we talked about doing nothing. You know,
what about jumping without a pole?
Jumping without a pole is called long jump or high jump. No, but even if you want to talk about top arm pressure, I know a lot of people are like, oh, you got to really move.
That's similar to rowing.
You're really focused on one arm over the other. But again, it's going to make you a little bit out of position.
Right.
So the other criticism that I often get, and we can talk about something that you mentioned before, some people are like, well, you know, Bronco, this technique is dangerous.
Right.
Someone could get, I'm worried someone will watch your video and get hurt. You know, I mean, first of all, you as an athlete, do you feel that this technique is dangerous?
Personally, after doing the technique for 4 years, I don't think this technique is dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, I did only do like a season with my high school coach. Yeah. And, you know, maybe I didn't try it enough, but I mean, I had a couple where I landed in the box, landed on the runway.
Yeah. And here's what I want to say about dangerous vaulting. And I always try to do this because I remember actually talking to a buddy of mine on the phone, and we coach very similarly. And I said, you know, I feel like sometimes, especially like if you coach a certain technical model or whatever, and again, you end up in a little echo chamber. You only talk to people who coach like you and jump like you. So you know, now you're always agreeing. And I go, we always used to fall in that like, well, our technique is just so much safer. And here's the thing. I don't actually believe any technique is safer or more dangerous.
Right. I think pole vault in general is a dangerous thing to do. Yeah,
there's danger in pole vault. But what I was going to say is like, I think you can coach any technique or any model safely or unsafely, right? Like if I started all of a sudden over gripping people and they're not getting into the pit, they can get hurt.
Correct.
Or vice versa. Let's say like in this podcast, we've been kind of talking about how we don't like blocking. I'm telling you 100%, I could coach people to block and they would be safe because I wouldn't overgrip them. I even told somebody, I'm like, dude, I can have people helicopter into the pit. I could try to coach helicoptering into the pit.
Yeah, you can do anything safely.
And just keep the grip low enough where it's going to be safe. Right. Is that going to be optimal? Are they going to jump as high as they possibly can? that's up for debate.
We argue.
But yeah, but the whole, my thing is the whole safety thing, that just bugs me out. Like, really? Like, I don't know that me coaching an analysis video of straight pull era jumper and saying, hey, these little pieces of elements of the jump can be implemented, that's going to hurt somebody. Also, I would mention, I have seen people do all kinds of crazy stuff on Instagram and social media and YouTube. I mean, people are setting up like poles with ropes and hanging on them and bending them upside down. And I noticed there's not a crash pad underneath them, and the pole could break and they slam on their head. Or even a lot of the spotting drills that people do in pole vault, where like the person's taking a couple steps and jumping up and trying to bend the pole and someone holds them up.
Yep.
I mean, I can't imagine if like I was just in high school and I saw that video and I didn't know anything and I'm like, hey Rob, let's try that drill together. And there's no coach supervising us. And then Rob grabs my ankles instead of my back, and I fall backwards head first and crack my skull open. I mean, a lot of things could be dangerous. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I think that's not a fair criticism. And like, listen, even drills that we don't do at Apex, and even some things that maybe I consider dangerous, right? If they're done properly, they're not dangerous.
Right.
You know, and
if anything done properly,
not anything.
No. But any pole vault technique done properly and done with the right coaching and done with a good coach
could be done safely.
Anything.
And listen, maybe also, like, I always, as a coach, I'm like risk versus reward, right? That's why a lot of times, like at Apex, again, context, especially prior to COVID, right? It's like we have 20 people at the club, 10 people per pit, 2 coaches. We're coaching a session. There's not really a lot of time for spotting drills. And then also it's like risk versus reward. Like if somebody got hurt, and like how much better is this drill going to make them? But now, that being said, right, if maybe, I don't know, let's say instead of Rob being a 13-7 guy, Rob was like a, 19-3 guy. And we're trying to, make sure we go to the Olympics this summer.
I mean, it's not that far.
Not that far. It's just a couple feet. But maybe that drill is warranted for us in our situation.
Yeah, if we thought that could give us the last.
Right, that's going to get us to the Olympics, right? That little percentage. Or even, heck, even if you're a high school coach and you have a kid that's trying to win states or whatever the case may be, and you feel like the risk is worth the reward, hey, we are taking risks just by pole vaulting.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That was the point I was trying to make earlier.
Right. So it's like, I really don't like the whole danger thing. I mean, we just brought up like MMA and jiu-jitsu. People are paying money to get punched in the mouth. Like, you know what I mean?
Over and over.
Yeah, or like getting arm barred and stuff like that. So these things we're all making choices like, I want to do this sport. Absolutely. And this whole danger thing, it just really throws me away. And here's the thing. I'm at the very least, I don't just have that analysis video up.
Right.
I have instructional videos on my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can literally go to the Apex YouTube channel and look at every single drill progression we have, where I literally walk you through, and it's done in a very safe manner.
Right.
I'm not just putting out one video and that's it. Figure it out, The other thing is, I constantly have people reaching out to me from all over the country who I get on the phone with them. I answer their emails. I'm helping them out and trying to figure out, okay, what's the next step? What do we need to do? Trying to set that kid up and be like, all right, here's the video of these drills. This is how many times you should do it. Then progress to this drill sequence and whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, I find it hard to believe that I'm the bad guy in this situation,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Again, that doesn't mean you need to agree with me. I mean, if you look at the video and you're like, listen, Bronco, I don't agree. Bronco, I listened to your podcast with Rob. I think you guys are completely wrong. I believe in X. That's fine. And here's my thing. I'm very big on this. I love pole vault. I love the pole vault community. I want pole vaulting to grow. I really wouldn't care if you want to run backwards down the runway and helicopter over bars. God bless. Like, do whatever you want to do. It's your choice.
Yeah.
You do what you want. All I'm doing when I present my social media is like, hey, this is how we do it here.
and this is what we've like learned. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. Like, listen, there's all different ways to make Thanksgiving stuffing, right? There's all different types of recipes that involve all different types of ingredients. This is just our stuffing, right? You don't like it, you don't have to have it. You know what I mean?
But I bet you the person who made that stuffing says it is the best stuffing.
The best stuffing they've ever had. Hopefully.
Well,
Hopefully. But listen, I'm very serious on this. If they're not happy with the recipe, please email me. I'll try to help you as much as possible. And maybe I can even steer you in the right direction for someone else that can help you in a different way. But yeah, I mean, like, I think that's the big thing too, is just like, I get, like, if you disagree, and you could disagree, and I welcome the comments and I welcome the DMs.
And it's not that we don't like talking about people that disagree. Like, I love talking to people that disagree and like trying to like understand, because the thing is, the more I understand about what they're saying, the more it gives us like tips, because they could say something that could like register with what we actually do.
Sure. Listen, even if I'm on completely the other side, there might be something that's like, ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Or there's some common ground.
Or there's like a cue that they give that could work.
Sure. And even I would say, even forget about, I mean, there's more in common with pole vault than not common. Like, we're all running down a runway and trying to jump over a stick with another stick, right? So it's like, there's other things that we can talk about that are common ground. I mean, I've had plenty of coaches reach out to me who are starting clubs or whatever, and they may not coach exactly like me, but they have questions about running a club. You know what I mean? Like, why would, like, even if you disagree with me technique-wise and you're starting a club for the first time, like, probably not a bad idea to reach out and ask me some questions about running a club. You know what I mean?
Or anyone,
Yeah. So I think there's stuff like that. I'm trying to remember if there was anything that we didn't talk about. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention?
Well,
we both have notes. This is how you know we're both nerds.
Didn't you have something else about?
Well, I have maybe one more story. One more story and one more comment. Did you have anything else?
Well, yeah, we could talk about like more about movement and positions. So like, I know you always talk about how you're not big on positions, you're more big on movement. I think the biggest thing that we like to point out with when you pull is that you're getting into those positions, those ideal positions, without thinking about positions per se.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God, I cannot remember the sprint coach's name right now. I was at a coach's clinic. This is years ago, and I apologize, guys. I can't remember the sprint coach's name. I think he's from Texas Tech at the time. But I saw Jim B. Miller speak, who obviously coached Tim Mack to Olympic gold, and Richard Fulford, one of his first athletes, was there, and we were talking about like baby hurdles, you know, or running through wickets, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And what I loved, I feel like the name Anderson is coming to my head, but anyway, he was talking about like all the phases of sprinting, right? Like the cycle of sprinting, right? Like, and all the different positions of running. And one of the things he said, and again, I think if you like, it's not that you never talk about positions, but he was trying to explain simply, he's like, it's funny. He goes, I never talk about any of these positions in sprinting. Like, I never talk about the cycles. He goes, I just go knee up, foot down, and they run through wickets. And shockingly, when I videotape them, they hit all these positions, right?
Exactly.
And so sometimes there's a danger, a risk, if you keep hammering positions, because listen, I think it's disingenuous. Like, it's not that I never mention a position at the club.
Oh, of course.
Like, a beginner comes in, it's like, yeah, sure. Like, we do a swing to a sit, right? They swing, land on their butt into the pit. I'm like, listen, I want you to land like this, left leg straight, right knee bent, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, and even we were talking about getting our hands above our head. I mean, that's like a position.
Sure, but it's all in the overall overarching theme of movement. Like, these positions will happen through the movement, and you have to be fully aware of that movement. That I think is critical, you know?
Right. Absolutely. I agree. And what I was like getting at is,
how do you feel focusing on movement versus position has helped you in your pole vaulting career?
I mean, For me personally, I feel like it's definitely helped me a lot because I remember this is actually like a story that my freshman year before I had come to the club, I was jumping at an 10-foot bar maybe at the time or something like that, and we'd been talking about trying to get inverted, obviously.
Right.
That's like a big thing.
Yeah.
And so I remember I went down, I missed the bar by a lot.
Yeah.
He took the video and he's like, "Look, you hit that position," and he got so pumped for me.
Right. The
and
coach is super happy that you hit the position, but you missed the bar.
But I missed the bar, and like at the time I was like, yeah, like that's good. Like I'm like but like looking back at it, it's like, why was that important if it didn't help me clear the next bar? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you probably should have got to the turn sooner.
Yeah. And you know what I love when I see like on Instagram, like all the people that post, like if they post like stills or they post like pictures of like them hitting positions and stuff.
Right.
And it's like, it's well and good, but it's like, you notice the poles like already almost at vertical and they're still
right. Like they're inverted and the pole like has no more room to roll over. They've got to get off the pole. Yeah. And even, you know, again, I would always caution people. It's like, I get like, especially like the bottom arm thing. Let's say you collapse all the time and you shouldn't, right? Let's say you're gripping high enough and you're athletic enough. And so you really shouldn't be collapsing and you finally aren't collapsing that bottom arm. All right. But I would also warn people, it's like, dude, you post that picture and that's in a jump that you missed the bar.
Yeah. It's
like how important is that?
Yeah. It's like, why?
Right. Like that position should be leading to something. Even if it's not a make, it should be like, okay, did you blow through? Like, can you go up a grip? Did you move the pole better? Do you have to go up a pole? Like, you know what I mean? Like it has to go somewhere.
Yeah. It has to lead to something and it has to progress you. You can't hit a position just for the sake of hitting a position.
Right.
Like, because that's disingenuous. Well, maybe not disingenuous, but like that's not ideal. Like you shouldn't just be aiming to hit positions. You need to be aiming to clear the bar.
Right. And look, I think definitely, you know, you have learned a lot about movement, and that's why I think a lot of times you're very good. It's like you might be blowing through, but you're able to get through the turn and get off the pole and clear the bar.
Right.
Where I feel like
almost better.
Right. That is better. Like, cause now you blew through and you made the bar. So now we can get to go up a pole, up a grip, and you're jumping at the next bar. Whereas like, look, even at this club, even though I'm hammering movement, there are still sometimes kids that get stuck in positions and they miss bars that should have been makes. You know, It's like I always talk about at a practice, like we always have 3 bungees up at Apex. So like, let's say the top one is at 14. That means the middle one's at 11. And let's say I have like a high school or college boy gripping like, I don't know, anywhere between like 11.6 to 12. And I'm like, dude, that's great that you wrapped 14, but you didn't clear 11.
Right.
Like you have to clear 11 every time. Right. Like I'd rather have the vaulter that clears 11 and doesn't wrap 14 than the guy that wraps 14 and doesn't clear 11.
Absolutely.
So it's like, that's really, really important. And I think movement helps a lot. Now, as you're telling this story, like even your freshman year experience in high school, jumping at a 10-foot bar or whatever, there could be people listening to this podcast and go, oh my God, why should I care what a 13.7 guy says about pole vault?
But it's like, why does it matter? Why does it matter how high someone jumps? You know what I mean? Like what? Because
that's the only way I know it's good.
I mean, I guess, but But think about like martial arts. You bring this analogy up all the time. Like there are people that are world champions in martial arts, but aren't black belts. And there are black belts that aren't athletic enough to be world champions.
Right.
And the way you have a black belt is if you master all the skills. And so if you master all the skills, what does it matter how high they jump? I'm not saying I mastered all the skills, by the way. I definitely have not. But that being said, I feel like I've mastered
some skills.
Yeah. You know, and I feel like maybe, I mean, my word shouldn't mean anything to just, but like, I feel like my word means something to some people, you know?
Right. I mean, I think this is the difficulty too. And I always bring up, there's so many sports, right? You know, again, for example, in basketball, You know, your elbow is supposed to be underneath your hand when you shoot the ball.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of professional basketball players who are great shooters. They're really good at the three-point shot, and their elbow's sticking out.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big no-no. If you were coaching kids how to play basketball, you would not allow that.
Yeah.
The thing is, that person learned how to shoot like that, and they're very good at shooting like that. Could they have shot better if they were taught properly in the beginning? Yeah, maybe. But at this point, listen, you're not going to go to an all-star basketball player who already has like a freaking 45% shooting percentage from the three-point line and be like, listen, we gotta completely rework your shot.
You just gotta fix this.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. And that's why I would say even in pole vault, right? Like I think if you're watching a professional pole vaulter jump, let's say on the women's side, it's a female that jumps like 15.9 or higher. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh my God, she's so bad at blah, blah, blah. Whatever skill.
Whatever it is.
You're not going to, first of all, you don't coach her. That's number one. Two, it's probably a little bit late to fix that now. You know what I mean? Like, and they jump the way they jump, and they're one of the, like, any woman in the world right now, if you jump 15.9 on any given day, you could win the meet. 16 feet. You're, I think, 97% chance of winning if you jump 16. If you go 5 meters, it's probably 99.9% chance that you win the meet. So my point being with that is, like, I don't know how much you want to reinvent the wheel.
Right. Like, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right. And I even go, I love the thing that I love listening to when I listen to Sam Kendricks and his father speak about Sam's career is, what I really like and what I take a lot of motivation from is that so many people were like, Sam's doing it wrong. Sam's doing it wrong. And, for whatever reason. And they stuck to their guns and did what they did. And they're jumping super high.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, what are you going to say? He's trash? He's an American record holder. Like, this is ridiculous. The guy is a stud, right? So it's like, again, a lot of the things that, we've been talking about in this podcast, I certainly would never walk up to a professional and be like, listen.
We got the secret sauce.
Yeah. Listen, I know you're doing okay, but I can completely fix all of this. You just got to move to New Jersey. Sign up for the gold package every season,
The premium package.
The premium package. But, so it's like, that's the thing. But that being said, just because you jump high doesn't always mean that you're technically efficient,
Right,
and
that's true.
Now, how do you measure technique? I mean, there's certain things that we look at this club, but I heard someone tell me, they're like, well, it's meters per second and the bar you cleared. So you'd have to look at a chart and be like, are you beating the chart? Are you jumping higher than what the meters per second says? Well, here's the problem. A lot of us are not going to know the meters per second that we're hitting at takeoff.
Yeah, none of us have.
Most people don't have the equipment. They're not going to set it up. I also would highly advise not to buy the equipment, because if you're spending all your time at practice when you have a lot of people and you're running a club and you're measuring just their speeds and you're like, Rob, that was an 8.3 and you only wrapped this bungee. That's not good enough. It's like, you got to actually coach the event. You can't just be looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
Like, the analogy I'll give you is there's these things called tendo units in lifting. Louis Simmons has one at Westside Barbell where they have more 1,000-pound squatters than the rest of the world. But anyway, so he started using the tendo unit to measure bar speed, like how fast the bar is moving up when you squat or you bench or whatever. And after a little while, he was like, we're not using this anymore. Because it's interrupting practice. Everybody's so involved with whatever freaking this machine is spitting out numbers-wise, they can't focus on other things. It's like, we need to throw this away. And again, this is another discussion, but this is why sometimes I'm anti-iPad or whatever, especially at meets, but practice, you got 10 people, forget about it. You need to coach the event and give that automatic feedback. We can't be obsessing over one little frame. But anyway, so my point is, most people aren't going to have that meters per second. My advice, look at DJ's mid chart. DJ's mid chart, he has a grip and he has a bar that you should clear. Hey, I mean, DJ, he's coached some good people, whatever. I think it makes sense, a lot of the things. He's done a lot of research to put that chart together. And I listen, you don't have to be religious with it, but I'm saying you have something charted out.
Yeah, that way you have something to compare yourself to.
Let me just grab the chart.
basically the idea is that you want to have a frame of reference for what you're doing, because if you don't have a frame of reference, then how do you know what's good or bad?
Yeah. So, I mean, like looking at DJ's chart, for example, let's say, okay, you're coaching, a bunch of high school kids. Well, DJ says if your kid has an 11-1 grip, they should jump 10 feet. So if your kid's jumping 10, awesome, you're on the chart. That's
right.
what DJ says. If you beat the chart, let's say your kid jumps 10-6, even better, they're efficient. Mm-hmm. I would say if you're beating it by more than one, if now you have a kid gripping 11 and they're jumping 11, how is that kid generating that much push off and gripping that low?
Right.
Probably something's wrong with takeoff.
Right.
And vice versa, if you have, let's say, let's go somewhere else in the chart. If you have a kid gripping 13.5, right, the chart says 14 feet. Well, if he's gripping 13.5 and jumps 13.6, okay, I mean, like, that's close. But if he's only jumping 13, all right, something's wrong with the swing and turn. You know what I mean? So you can use this chart. I don't know what everybody else thinks. I don't know how sciencey they think you have to get, especially if you start coaching more than 3 people. But again, this is a rough estimate and you can start to make decisions. And I that's why I've always loved DJ's chart, I don't know. I think that's important. And so now again, when we talk about what is good, from a technical standpoint, it's not height alone. Just because some guy jumps 17, I mean, my best example, right? I remember when I first started coaching, and I was maybe 2-3 years into coaching. I started coaching college, and I'm at a meet, and Fairleigh Dickinson had this guy that was jumping 15.9 without a turn. Dude, but here's the thing. He was jumping 15.9, and he had 14.6 grip. Well, on DJ's chart, 14.4 is 15.6. So he's beating DJ's chart without a turn.
What is that?
I'm going to go on a wild limb there and say that's probably, even though he's on the chart, he's beating the chart, probably not technical. He doesn't have a turn. So that's where it's like, look, there are these elements. You have takeoff, swing, and turn. Are you watching these elements of the jump? Those are part of technique. How's the person's pole carry? What does their run look like? Are they backside or are they front side? You should be front side. Do they jump up? Do they go long, short, and jump up at takeoff? There's so many elements of the vault, and you have to be teaching all these elements. If we're just going to be like, well, I know this person's carry is shit. They're running backside. They're super flat, but dude, he jumped 17. He's pretty good.
It's like, what? Like, what does it matter?
Yeah. So why even coach technique? I'm just going to tell everybody run as fast as you can and slam into the box.
Yeah.
So, I think we have to stop thinking about, watch videos and start to look at them and don't look at the height. Don't look at what the bar clearance is. Mm-hmm. Just be like, let me watch this video. I don't want to know what the height is. Do I think this is a good jump?
Yeah.
That I think is big. And something that I know I've talked a lot about with people is swing speed matching pole speed. Is there a flow to the jump? This is something you have to start to create an eye for. I think that's another important factor. I know there was the other thing that I wanted to mention to clear up for a lot of people. I think a lot of times, and we have a lot of discussions even not about pole vault. A lot of times I think X.
Okay.
In order for me to debate X, do you think I should know something about Y?
I think you should know something about Y and Z.
Yeah, right.
Because you should always get to know all other perspectives. You don't want to, we were talking about with the echo chamber and all. You don't want to get yourself into a point where even if just having a conversation is against your religion, you know what I mean?
Right. And here's the thing. I think we were talking about it before. We always entertain people's arguments, right? You've had many discussions with people. I've obviously had many discussions with people because I do want to hear the other side, of course, right? And then do you remember in high school, you came up to me, I think it was maybe end of junior year or sometime senior year. Do you remember you had asked me a question? Your coach wanted you to do something.
I'm not remembering.
I can't. This is terrible, guys.
I'm sorry.
I have a great memory, by the way. You know,
I guess I thought I did too.
do you remember your coach wanted you to go somewhere?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So I remember you approaching me about, you know, how I would feel because his coach wanted him to go visit another club.
Right.
And what was my response to you?
Yes. Go.
Oh, like extrapolate. We're on a
my gosh.
podcast.
So you were like, yeah, like you should go like see what they have to offer, kind of, and like you should, you know, I mean, you should be open but not be stupid, I guess is kind of how you put it. I don't know how to.
Yeah, I don't know if I use the word stupid.
No, but like
yeah.
you know, but like be like don't do something that
don't get hurt.
Right,
yeah,
and
yeah.
don't do something that you think is gonna make you like worse. I guess I don't.
Right,
know. I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know how to describe it because you have to also be open to like suggestions, like you
Right,
said
and the thing that I, you know, and again, you know about this situation. I remember one year I had an athlete that I think was like a little bit doubting things and not sure, and it tends to happen, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
as you start to jump higher, all of a sudden, all the critics come out and they're like, dude, bro, you could jump so much higher all the time. You know what's funny? I've never had a single person approach a girl jumping 8 feet or a boy jumping 11 going, bro, you could jump so much higher. It's always like once a girl's jumping 11-ish, once a boy's jumping 13-ish, at least in our neck of the woods, that's when all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork and be like, bro, you know how you could jump a lot higher, you know? But the thing that, I told that kid, I was like, listen, if you are having doubts, you should go to other clubs. And that's okay. If you got to go for a day, a week, a month, a year, whatever. And then listen, if you ever want to come back, you can come back, no problems.
Right.
And even in your situation, I was like, because again, he's a pole vault nerd. So I'm like, I think it'd be a good experience for you to go to another club, see what they have to. I mean, maybe you go there and you're like, oh my God, this is better, you know? And then it's like, who cares about me? You don't owe anything to me.
And the thing is, you have to have that mentality when you go in a little bit. You know what I mean? And maybe I was like looking back, I might have been a little like closed off per se, but but I definitely was like open to suggestions. And I remember, I think I remember I came back with like saying like something that I thought they did that was like good.
Yeah.
I forget what it was.
My memory is.
I don't remember what the cue was, but I remember they said, and I was like, oh, like maybe you could like, but I remember we had like a discussion about it or something.
Yeah, well, but, that just goes to show too, even when maybe it's like polar opposites, and this club is like very different from ours. Mm-hmm. Like even when you're polar opposites, there could be something that crosses over. You know what I mean? That brings certain things together, and maybe they do have a drill or a progression that would be valuable. And that's why even like sometimes things that are outside of your school of thought, it might be valuable to kind of discuss. Mm-hmm. There was something else I wanted to say. Sorry that I have to go to these notes all the time. So what? And what I wanted to add to this, my personal experience, right? Like one, I jumped in high school. For those of you that haven't heard, I've mentioned this on another podcast. I jumped 10-6 in high school. I was terrible.
Stud.
Yeah, I jumped in like 1905. That was really good back then.
Yeah, right.
No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so I jumped 10-6. I was terrible. I started coaching. After I started coaching, I would end up jumping 14, you know, whatever. And not that 14 is any good, but like it is what it is. It was better for me. I was happy. But like, you know, I jumped without a coach in high school. Then when I started coaching, I mean, like I learned a lot from a blocking school of thought, you know. Then I found Beginner to Bupka, read that cover to cover. That was a huge inspiration, changed the way I coach. I started using DJ's chart. That was a huge help. You know, then I worked with Mike Lorick from Vertical Assault. That was a huge help. I actually got to do a clinic with Alan Launder. That was amazing. I spent 4 summers, not whole summer, but like a week at a time, 4 summers in a row in Tennessee with Roman Bacharnikov. That helped a lot. But it's like, I have gone through several different schools of thought. Like what I feel like sometimes people don't realize, it's not like from day one, I've been coaching and jumping this technical model. I've tried other stuff. And for me, this is what I found in my context, in my environment. This is what works.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of times, and the issue, like what you're bringing up and why I told you to go to that club, is a lot of the people that argue with me, they've never done it any other way.
Or it's like they've never tried it in the complete, like you went from block, like,
or they don't have experience in what I'm talking
right.
about.
Like think about how crazy that is. We're literally the whole first half of this is about like, you probably shouldn't block. You probably shouldn't do this. And then you're talking about how, oh yeah, I used to block. I used to do all that.
Dude, I remember how pumped I was. So again, my PR was 10-6 in high school, right? So we start going to this one place. They're really big blockers, right? And I start coaching, and it's exciting. I'm getting better. Dude, I jumped 10-6 in high school. I'm going to get better. And I remember I was like on a 14-160. It was the second pole ever that I bought for myself. I was on a 14-160, gripping 13, and I jumped 12-6. And I was pumped. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
And looking back.
Well, looking back. And then it's like I started doing a lot of Petrov Bubka stuff because of beginner to Bubka. Mm-hmm. Well, then a year later, I ended up jumping 13-6 with 13-foot grip.
So same grip.
Yeah, but now I'm
PR.
jumping. Yeah, I was like, I was like, I felt better. And then, I mean, my only regret, once I started coaching this way, is I never competed from a full approach. Like I only ever competed from a 5 because every time like June was usually the month that I could start doing some full approach work because coaching wasn't as hectic,
right,
but there were no meets
right,
at that point. And then once meets started, I was busy coaching. So I'd back it up because I jumped 14 from a 5, or, you know, Max Schumann would probably say I jumped 13, 11 3/4 or whatever.
I feel like everyone would say.
Anyway. Dude, they set the bar at 14. Nobody's putting the bar at 13.
I'm telling you, they always put it at the meters.
Yeah. Anyway,
I mean,
at a beach vault.
That's why they
at a beach vault. At a beach vault. We don't know if the bar was actually at 14.3 or 13.9, if we're being honest. But anyway, so I was gripping 13.
He's PR 17, guys.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It could have been. No, but so I was gripping 13 from a 5, jumped 14, but I was able to grip as high as 14 from a 7.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, even if my push-up just stays the same, I jumped 15. Mm-hmm. Even if a little less, whatever, 14.9. Like, but anyway,
that's good, right?
Yeah, but you know, the thing is, like, that's the transition I went through. You know what I mean? Like, I've gone through a lot of these different schools of thought and tried it and implemented it. I mean, heck, even those spotting drills.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Did you used to do
as
those?
a young coach doing some spotting drills? I can't tell. There's a lot of good stories. There's this one technique where you stand next to the runway, not behind the person.
Oh, and
as they go up, you like kind of grab their left leg, if that's their takeoff leg, mm-hmm. and then put your arm on on their upper back, mm-hmm. and you hold them up. Well, the one kid, he runs up and like kind of jumps towards me, so he hip checks my head. I have a chipped tooth from that spotting drill. The kid was safe, by the way. Nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happened to the kid.
But I was just like, oh my God. So there's a lot of that stuff where I'm like, also, I can't imagine if I have like a full Sunday where we could see up to like sometimes 50 people on a Sunday, you know, and or more, even 60.
Yeah.
But it's like, I can't imagine spotting
that many people.
Yeah. 50 people.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah, like you're gonna mess up once.
I'm gonna tear my rotator cuff or shoulder labrum. That's what's gonna happen. Forget about mess up. I'm gonna need shoulder surgery. But anyway, so yeah, I think that's an important thing. It's like, if you're gonna, you know, say, hey, I don't think that works, I think you should try it. Because I've told you stories where it's like, I remember one time doing a pole vault camp or clinic. Yeah, it was a one-day thing, so clinic, I guess, is the proper term. But it was, you know, a lot of people. It was at this college, and one of the college guys, before the clinic started, he's another pole vault nerd like me and you, and he's like, Bronco, like, I'm kind of interested. I want to learn what you're doing. And so I did some 2s and 3s with the kid, and I did some drills, and it was so funny. So I'm telling him to pull and swing, and, you know, and one of his teammates comes by, and he's like, dude, but if he pulls, isn't that going to stop the pole moving? I'm like, don't ask me, ask him. And he's like, bro, do you feel like it slows down the pole speed? He's like, no, it makes it better. And later, that kid would like message me telling me, you know, how thankful he was because he ends up PRing and becomes a Division III All-American that year. Yeah.
That's so cool.
So, yeah, it was pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. But again, like, that's the thing. It's like, I think some people need to actually try it. They have to go through it before they can have a real opinion on it.
Yeah, and also, like, I know everyone claims dangerous, but it's like, just if you start with like a low enough grip, just try it, see what happens.
Yeah, I'm not a single video have I ever said, hey, listen, I want you to really try this technique on the biggest pull you've ever jumped on the highest grip, regardless if you've had 6 months off because of COVID. Just start off there, and that's what you want to do. That's not what you should do.
No, of course not. You should always ease into any new technique.
Right. And as much as I think, Rob and I are trying our best to explain the technique that I posted about on Instagram with the video of Bob Richards, even listening to this podcast does not do it justice.
No.
I think in any kind of sport, right, you could watch a video, you could listen to a podcast, but the thing is, until you start to do it, right, it's all just theory, right?
Yeah.
This is, and again, this is like a completely different podcast episode, but it's like, I love also, like I had a moment one time at my college that I coached, we finally got, a full-time strength and conditioning coach. Now, I've been doing strength and conditioning with my pole vaulters, and at the time I was doing it with the whole track team. I did the weights for the whole track team. And we get this full-time strength and conditioning coach who literally just finished college. Also, listen, and this is also another episode in post, dude doesn't look like he trains.
Yeah, you could.
Dude doesn't look like he just finished college. He is an exercise science major, and the dude doesn't look like he trains. Like, I'm talking about, he looks super normal, no big muscles. The biggest muscles on him are his calves, right? That's it. No chest, no arms, no back, no big glutes, no hamstrings, no quads. It's just regular dude. And here's the thing. I'm getting massive results. I mean, at that time, I had a girl that weighed 110 pounds. She was box squatting 305. Like, we're getting all these great results. One of our jab guys, who's not the biggest guy for a javelin guy, like bigger than me, obviously, but he was a guy, maybe he was 210 pounds. But I mean, this guy was deadlifting well over 500 pounds, power cleaning over 300 pounds. You know what I mean? And this was like huge PRs and lifting numbers, which would get him from 190 javelin to, I think, 208. So we're just getting amazing results. And I mean, this guy would not even look at me. Like, when we would pass each other, he would just look away. And the thing is, like, listen, I understand you maybe read something.
Right.
I understand that maybe you watched something. That does not mean you know how to implement it.
Right.
One, this guy doesn't have enough personal experience lifting. Yeah. But two, he's never coached anybody. If you think I'm handing over my 110-pound girl that box squats 305 to you, that's not happening. I'm just not. You gotta earn it. You gotta earn it, right? And so the thing is, even with this pole vault stuff, I think a lot of times there's people like, I don't think people understand the whole pole vault club scene too. I had Tim Riley on. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many people he coaches in a year, but it's a lot. I know here, like, we typically have 100 athletes all year round. Right. I've definitely coached over 1,000 people at this point. I know Mike Lorick, one of my mentors, Mike started vertical assault. They would have, I think on the big years, they probably had over 150 athletes.
That's a lot. Like, you got to understand, like, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. And also a wide range of demographics. This is not like, oh, I'm the D1 coach at Texas.
Yeah, you're not getting
and I only get the creme de la creme. You know what I mean? Like, all the guys are 6'4", 185.
Right, yeah. You're not getting carbon copy. You're getting anywhere from, white belt to black belt.
Yeah, and you're getting 5 foot, 100-pound Sally to, you might even have like 6'4", maybe not in great shape Johnny, So it's like you're getting all these different demographics. I mean, even you're getting masters athletes who are trying to get back into shape. They're trying to use pole vault to spark that fire and desire to help get healthy, So it's like you're getting all these different demographics, and you've got to figure out how to work with all of them. And it's like I think that's an important thing. Not only that you go through all these different schools of thought, not only that you start coaching, but you have to have ability with all these different demographics. Yeah. Don't tell me about just one person. I mean, I know I just gave you an example of only two, right? The sprinter and the javelin thrower. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to have all the experience. Yeah. We can't just sit and talk theory. You have to put it into practice. Otherwise, it's just theory. It's just It's just a thought experiment, you know?
Theory is good. I mean, theory is what makes good, plans. But if you're not good at making plans, it doesn't matter how good the theory is.
Well, and look, like we can use the recipe analogy, right? We're talking about
yeah.
stuffing, right?
Right.
It's like, that's fine to talk about, oh, I think this recipe would be amazing. But go cook it and then taste it.
Yeah.
If it tastes good, awesome, success. Do that again. But more than likely, especially when you're starting out,
Yeah.
you're going to taste it and be like, I'm not going to tell anybody this tastes like shit. And next time you're going to have to tinker and figure it out.
Yeah.
Figure it out, you know?
Figure out how to change it.
Also, what I'd highly advise, because I did this with Beginner to Bupka. I basically looked at Beginner to Bupka as my cookbook.
Yeah.
Right? And what I noticed, the closer I followed the recipe, the better the dish came out. Tasted really good. So I just started following the book more and more and more. And then once you follow a recipe enough, then you could start to tinker and play.
Yeah, you need to know a recipe in and out before you can like start messing with it, or like you need to understand a technical model. You need to be able to convey a technical model to anyone and apply it to anyone before you can start. I mean, before you can start, playing around or saying it's bad or this and that or the other.
Yeah, especially before you reinvent the wheel, before you make your own technical model, right? It's like if Rob was like, I'm going to make the Robert Plumb model. This is very special. It's different. It's like before you do that, you probably should master some other model.
Right,
you
exactly.
Know what I mean? Yeah, I think this is all like super, super important stuff. You know what I mean? Like you really got to dive in. You got to learn. You got to spend the time. I think before you start to criticize something, you definitely have to understand it.
Absolutely. 100%.
I feel like one, this has been a great episode.
I agree.
But two, it's getting late and we probably both have to head home.
And I think that was a great place to end it.
Yeah, a great place to end it. So again, thanks for watching. For those of you on YouTube, thanks for listening. For those of you on iTunes podcast or SoundCloud, again, if you love this podcast, if you enjoy it, you know what? Please subscribe. Also, share it. Tell your friends about it. Come on. Let's get these viewerships and listens up.
We're talking about, knowing everything.
Yeah. And, again, it's just Apex Vaulting on YouTube. It's The Real Apex Vaulting on Instagram. It's Apex Vaulting on Facebook and Twitter. On iTunes, it's the Apex Vaulting Podcast, also on SoundCloud. If you have any comments or questions, please email us at apexvaulting@gmail.com. Also, don't forget, holidays are around the corner. You're looking for a good gift for that pole vaulter you love and care about. Yeah. Do you really love and care about them? Because they want a pole vault gift, and you could get a great pole vault gift on the Team Hoot website through Sean Francis. And if you use the promo code APEXPV, you can get a discount. Again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're watching, until next time. Thanks, Rob.
Of course.